I guess nobody can hear me.
Yes, hear you.
We can hear you, Rick.
What's
That may have
going
been-
on here?
You have your mute button pushed. That's usually my problem.
We're live, everybody. If you want to call it to order, Rick, if you can. Rick, you ready to call us to order? Rick?
Rick, can you hear us?
Rick may. I'll tell you what, Vince, you can't, so Rick can't hear?
Apparently not.
Apparently not.
Oh, there it goes again.
Vince, you are our vice chair, I think, and you have feedback issues.
Yeah, you know what? Let me log out and I'll log back in.
Got it. I got it.
Oh,
there
he's
goes-
on.
All right,
good.
Rick. Yeah, go ahead and call us to order if you would.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Okay. The Isle of Palms Planning Commission will hold our regular meeting today. And our call into order and acknowledging that the press and public were duly notified in accordance with state law. New business, or I'm sorry, approval of minutes. First, the minutes of October 14th.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Approval of minutes for October 28th.
Move to approve.
I'll second that as well.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
New business, consider recommending amendments to the zoning ordinance regulating sewer lift stations in residential districts. Doug, it's all yours.
Okay. These edits are coming about as a result of your October 28th special meeting. And at that meeting, we kind of, or you all agreed in concept to, so the major changes here are that it would take the approval from a staff level approval and change it to a special exception to be approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Oh, hold on. Let me admit, Vince. So it would go through the Board of Zoning Appeals for approval. And then this draft creates 7 new criteria that these lifts and these lift stations would be weighed against when the Board of Zoning Appeals considers approving or denying these requests. And they are, to kind of go through them quickly, that the footprint of the facility be less than 1,000 square feet, that the facility be equipped with an odor control device that would eliminate at least 98% of the odorous compounds associated with them. Number 3, that the wastewater components be screened from view with a solid 8-foot tall fence. Number 4, that a vegetative buffer be created around the outside of that fence, and it would be 10 feet in each direction, 10-foot deep vegetative buffer. 5th item would be that lights associated with these facilities wouldn't be on all night. They would only be used when somebody was working on them. 6th item is that generators would not be permanently installed and that they would just be brought onto site as they were needed. And 7th is an overall height limit of the equipment or the structure, if they chose to do a structure, of 12 feet for the equipment or 16 feet for the enclosure. So I think that's kind of generally what the Planning Commission talked about at their last meeting. This draft has been forwarded to the Water and Sewer Commission for their comments. They did have some comments about the height of equipment initially, but I think they're satisfied with that requirement. They also had a little bit of technical concern with the buffer, and particularly putting trees adjacent to these pumps and the facilities and the damage that those roots could do. I indicated that we would certainly work with them on the choice of vegetation that they chose on these, and they seem to be agreeable to that. So I would say that generally the Water and Sewer Commission found these conditions to be reasonable. And so from this point, the next step would be, once you will make a recommendation, it would go back to City Council for a public hearing and consideration of second reading. That's all I have.
I got a couple of questions.
Okay.
The first question is on item 2, the 98%.
Yes.
Where was that? How was that found, or how was that determined?
Yes. So that was taken, that is a suggestion of the vendor. On that point specifically, I went down to the station on Waterway Boulevard, and that odor control device has a vendor's name on it, and I think it was BioRim. So I contacted that company about kind of the industry standard of what, when they set these devices up, they basically come in, they monitor the air and the volume of air and what they need to treat without any odor control device on it. And they then set their goal of 98% of reduction in, and I guess it's hydrogen sulfide is the primary problem, but that's their target when they size a odor control device. They had some that they said could get up to 99%, but that, from a regulatory standpoint, that's kind of the golden standard, and they didn't think that it would be reasonable to set that as a baseline that had to be adhered to it all the time. They felt like 98% was a reasonable standard for a baseline. That typically it would be much higher than that, but maximum load time, they thought that 98% was a good.
Douglas, do you think they believe the one on Waterway meets that standard?
We did talk about, we talked specifically about that one, and I told them that I had heard, and they said, they basically said that at 98%, it would be undetectable. Unless you were right up to it, it would be undetectable. And we talked specifically about the one at Waterway Boulevard, and that still at high peak times, they felt like, or the community has indicated that there is still a detectable odor at that facility. They indicated that there was probably a need for an additional device. If that was the case, their feeling was that it probably was not meeting that 98% threshold.
But now the 98% is basically a relative numbers. 98%, in other words, you have 100% if nothing is there. You add this device onto it and you reduce the smell by 98%. You're not really talking about hydrogen sulfide. You're talking about the mixture, whatever it is coming out of it, right?
That's correct.
So it's not really a hard number. It's
well, it is a hard number. I think the point you're making is that 98% out of an enormous sewer treatment facility might still be detectable.
Yeah, that's where I'm going.
Because it's a huge quantity. And when you have 2% of a huge quantity, you still have a detectable quantity, I think is your, is the point.
Station alert has arrived.
And we talked about that, and they indicated that for a massive facility, their goal would have to be something more than that you can basically detect 2% of a sewer treatment facility, that would probably still be detectable. But this was their standard for a lift station.
Did you think about, I know I thought about it and I didn't come up with an answer, but what about something like detectability? In other words, nothing can be detected if you're away from the property line or the fence line or whatever. In other words, if somebody can smell something, it's not right.
And that's in there. The intent was for that to be in there. The first sentence is the facility shall be equipped with an odor control device that makes odor undetectable from all residentially used property.
Yeah, I read that and I like that. And then you swing into this 98% thing, which can
Well,
be,
yes. So there, I would say that is two different triggers. One is talking about right at the gas, that's coming out of that pump has to be 98% filtered. The second one is talking about at residentially used property. So that, in the case of Waterway Boulevard, that is a property that's approximately 20 feet away, which isn't very far. But under this, I would say that you would stand at that property, and if it's detectable, they have a problem.
well, how about this? How about at the end of the first sentence, we add an and. So it becomes a residential use property and the equipment must eliminate.
Yeah, I
So-
think that's the intent. If you think that reads better, I'm agreeable to that.
Okay. By the way, just a point of interest, hydrogen sulfide, I've worked with that in years gone by, and a human being can detect 5 ppb of H2S, 5 parts per billion. You can detect that.
Ooh.
Yeah, think about it.
So does this get interpreted to say that if you smell any odor outside of the perimeter footprint, then it's in violation of the code?
That's the wish.
Yes, so if it is, well, not on their facility, but at residentially used properties. If you're standing theoretically, the way I would understand that and interpret that, if you're standing on their property and you can smell it, but it's eliminating 98% of the odorous elements, that is not necessarily a violation. But if you go across the street or to the back of the property where there's residentially used property and you can smell it, then it is a violation.
Okay, and not to mince words, but that doesn't seem clear to me, because if it's residentially used, then someone might say that goes to your property line. So if your property line is adjacent to this footprint, should you be able to stand at the end of your property line and have no odor? I'm just kind of asking the question the way I read it.
Yes, so you should be able to stand at your property line and not detect it. Is how I would interpret it. But if you walked up to the pump and you could smell it, but it's eliminating 98% of the particulates, that would still be compliant. So it would have to
Thank
be
you.
both of those. It would have to not be detectable at your property line, and it would have to be removing at least 98% of the elements generating the smell.
It'd be interesting to ask them how they determine that, how they measure that. We can move on, but
Well, I do have, okay, this is a net detail. So I'm running down Waterway on the sidewalk, which isn't residential, but it isn't in the footprint, and I can still smell it.
That's
Is that a
correct.
violation or not a violation?
Not if they're eliminating 98%, because that sidewalk is not residentially used property. That's a streetway.
Should it be within the footprint, or should it be, I mean, we've got that little gap there. But. So in other words, if people are walking by it, walking their dog, riding their bike, it's okay to have the odor.
That's the way it's written, and I would say, just to play that through, somebody walking past it is, that is what I would consider a mild inconvenience. Somebody that lives next to it is a whole different that's in my mind, that's a scenario that needs to be guarded against. I also would not want them, if they were given the latitude, if they were given this language, to me, this language is going to push them away from the house, away from a house, which may potentially push them closer to a road, which I would think is a better situation. That you get it as far away, not that you're necessarily trying to kind of split the difference between the road and the house, and you put it in the middle of the property, which is therefore closer to the house than you might have otherwise gone. So
Okay,
it's up for whatever you all think was best, but that's kind of how I viewed it.
okay. Thanks, Douglas.
Anything else on that point? Okay, the next comment I have is item 3 has all wastewater components. I would change that to all facility components.
Okay.
So that would include a generator or whatever else is stuck there. And the other, go ahead.
The only thing that I can think that would be problematic to that, so we have given them, we have acknowledged that there would be a light post. We've acknowledged that there potentially could be a building. But I guess we're saying we've kind of, yeah, I think we don't expect them to screen like a light fixture, do we?
Probably not.
How about wastewater facility components?
I think now we're just adding words to add words.
Yeah.
Well, that's probably true too.
Why the hatred towards septic systems again? Sorry. Thought I'd break the monotony there.
I'm fine either way. If facility components, I just think that administratively, I would probably deem that a light is not a facility component. So I think that's also a building wouldn't potentially.
Well, what if the whole enclosure was a building for some reason? You kind of, I think the language is probably fine the way it is. Going by Waterway Boulevard, there's that tank or drum, whatever the heck it is. That would be considered a component. That would need to be screened, but
Yeah, that's the odor control. The big round, tall. Yeah, that's the odor control device.
What is it, filled with activated carbon or something like that?
Yeah, it is. It's
how's
it is carbon and some kind of there's some biological warfare going on in there where
Okay.
it's good germs eating the bad germs as well.
I like your technical talk.
They had to dumb it down for me so I could get it.
I had a question about the fencing and the building.
Okay.
Is there any wording we could put in there to say that we'd like to have like fencing that looks okay, or looks good, or the building looks good, or?
Well, so, we put the word solid in there as opposed to chain link, just to
Yeah.
indicate that you couldn't see through it. I don't know if to me, I think requiring some kind of architectural view judgment would be a step too far, but
Since the city doesn't have any previous requirements for that.
yeah, we don't do it for anybody else's work.
You know, if they had a standard fence or enclosure or something, we could encourage them to develop.
Yeah,
I feel kind of like an 8-foot tall fence is what it is. There's no
Yeah.
real.
yeah, you're right.
And I
And
think
the other sorry,
Go ahead, Rick.
the other comment I had is item 8, which is not there yet.
Well, hold on, before we get off 3, were we going facility or are we going wastewater component?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm pretty well good either way.
All right, go ahead. Number 8,
Sound. I think we need to have some comment in here about sound. or
well,
noise.
so there is language, and I probably should have mentioned this, but there is generic language in the code about that the Board of Zoning Appeals applies to every special exception, and I will pull that up. But it does have to do with, and it's not a lot that they're looking at, but it's sound, glare. Hold on. Let me pull that. Okay, so in the generic special exception criteria, it says that the board will consider the regulations and generally apply the following standards. Adequate provisions shall be made for setbacks, fences, buffers, planting strips to protect adjacent properties from adverse impact of the proposed use such as noise, vibration, dust, glare, odor, traffic congestion, and similar factors. So that's already in there as something that the board should be considering.
Should we put a footnote in here or item 8 just saying revert, tunneling back to that ordinance or to that section?
So, yeah, we could actually, I mean, if you like it, we could reinsert that language again. It has noise, vibration, dust, glare, odor. I think we've pretty much covered, so I think we'd be duplicative to put that back in. Traffic congestion, we could put it in there. I don't know that there's any way that this thing is going to have a traffic congestion issue. And similar factors. You want to just reinsert that entire section,
Yeah.
taking out odor because we've already, okay. That's
Yes.
already a little bit duplicative because it's already in the section that they'll be considering, but I don't think it hurts.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
All right, anybody else?
Good.
I like it.
It's good.
You covered it.
Want to make a motion?
Make a motion to accept the language as written with the modifications.
I'll second.
The recommendation for approval with the given changes.
Yes.
Lisa, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Nobody opposed. Okay, so it's done.
All right, next on the agenda is review of community facilities. development and comprehensive plan. I think when we left this last month, we were, I think, we were at strategy. Did we get through? Did we get through 5, 4, 4? Did we get through all the strategies? No. I think we got through 5. There's no numbering there.
I think the packet had Marty's changes up to certain, I forget what number it was.
I think it's 5, 5, 5 in the original.
5-5.
I think that has us to goal 5.6. Take initiatives to address drainage and stormwater runoff on the island. Is that, Marty, does that jive with your note?
Sorry, I'm a little behind. I'm trying to dig it up. I'm sure you guys got it right though.
Yeah, it was 5 point, we should be on 5.6.
Okay, yeah, I think we're 561, and I. Would you all, is there a preference as to how we proceed? I don't know if it, if the group likes the going strategy by strategy and editing it as we go, or if that's tedious, or, and you'd rather kind of go over it in broad strokes and review it later. I don't know. You want to continue down the path we're doing?
How are we tracking on the overall schedule? Do we need to speed it up, or are we doing okay with our pace?
You know, there's not, I don't think that, I would say that we don't need to necessarily change things. Really, the schedule was not drafted with a hard ending at the end, but let me just look.
I'm guessing we're probably a little behind, but after the first of the year, maybe we have a couple of, if we need to get a couple of sessions to do a little catch up, maybe, I don't know. When we hopefully can get back face to face or something. But
Yeah.
I think the pace is the pace right now, kind of with everything that's going on.
Yeah, it appears that we are, we should have, well, we'll be 2 months behind at the end of this, but I think we're,
Sounds good.
we are kind of nearing the halfway done on the elements. So do we want to just keep pressing ahead as we were?
Yeah,
Yes.
And Marty, I'd like to permanently turn the sheet over to you. You're doing a much better job than I was. I'll help with the updates. Yeah.
So is that the polite way of saying I'm the low man on the totem pole here?
No, I looked at what you did and you knocked it out of the
Maybe
park.
the youngest.
I'll happily prepare the blank matrices, but you're doing a really good job. So kudos.
Okay, so I've got the spreadsheet up now, and I don't know what you guys said before, but I've got 5.6.
5.6.
Well, we had the renumbering, which I think kind of threw them. I think under the old draft, it was 5.6, but I think that will be a future. Well, no, it still will be 5.6.
No, it's 5.61. 5.6.
Yeah, that's right. we eliminated some strategies, so we had strategy renumbered, but I think it's still 5.6.
It is.
And that goal is cities should take initiatives to address drainage and stormwater runoff on the island. To me, I don't think there's any doubt that this is a real focus in the community in general and kind of seen as paramount for our city. So some of these strategies we'll just go through. I mean, there's no debate that I think it should be in there, I guess. 561, continue to work closely with the county and state agencies to properly maintain existing stormwater and drainage systems, clearly delineate the city's areas of responsibility and take appropriate action where feasible. Just personally, I'll tell you, I think the city has taken pretty significant strides on this specific strategy. There is now a staff person, Robert Acero, who it is his pretty much full-time job to bird dog these drainage issues, and that's happened in the last year. And he is doing a tremendous job of, and that's part of his challenge is, and it's still not clear, I don't think, to anybody, but he is working through the matrix of figuring out, who's responsible for which ditch. And so I think that, and I would say that that's pretty well funded and assigned. And I would say we're green on that one. Any comments on that one?
No, I think that's
Pretty clear.
it's good.
We ready for 562? Marty, any questions on the matrix? I think, I don't know if we discussed really a measure of success. I guess,
Sorry, did you guys send out an updated spreadsheet? Did anybody send that out and I just missed it, or? do we
No,
have to-
I didn't see anything. There was something in the packet, but that was the PDF of your edits from last time.
Yeah.
It was just a PDF though. It wasn't.
So, yeah, I think it's just working off, continuing to work off that tab from the prior session.
yeah,
Okay.
Marty, it's, what I have came from Scott. And now it's probably been 2 or 3
Yeah, I think
months.
you did the edits, Marty, so you probably have the most recent version.
Yeah, it's just what I guess I was getting at is it was already you already had it formatted with the existing language in there. So I'm at a dead end with that until I can copy it in.
Oh, I thought this section wasn't populated on a tab with all of the strategies, or no?
Correct. Yeah, it stopped where we stopped last time. And I think it's all coming back to me now. I remember we stopped because we were like,
Oh, okay, let me see if I can find it. While
I mean,
you're-
I could probably transfer it from the PDF, but it'll just take me some time. So if you already had it, that'd be great.
Well, let's, I tell you what, while, Marty, are you okay kind of doing that in the background while I think some of these we're going to find I think on this one, we're going to find that we're in pretty good shape.
Sure. Yeah. I'll just make notes here on the PDF and then I can scribe it over whenever we're done and send it to you guys for review.
All right, 562. Consider funding for a comprehensive drainage study that would isolate the highest priority areas and provide engineering options and costs. So this one is actually, we have kind of, we have discussed this at several different times, the idea of doing an island-wide master planning kind of exercise. And last time, you'll recall that the Planning Commission opted to really focus on internal projects and the engineering for those instead of a comprehensive drainage study. But I think at the staff level, we've advocated for this comprehensive study to be in the budget, and if I'm remembering correctly, it is in this year's budget to do, to have that done. So I would say that we leave that in there unless anybody has a, you know, as I said, the planning commission, I think, was instrumental in saying, let's direct that money to actual projects instead of a longer range study. But I think we are, as we kind of get farther down the road, I think the next project is going to be less obvious to identify, which is where, in my mind, this study would become very valuable. Any thoughts on that, or we just gonna? I would advocate we leave it there and put it on the list of things to do in the future.
Yeah, one of the things that I've been hit by a couple times is why aren't we looking at other outfalls? Why have we restricted ourselves to those three that we were working on today? And this is brought mainly to people up around 25th Street, that area.
Well, we can talk a little bit about later on the agenda is drainage planning, and I will tell you that one of the projects that we've tasked Thomas and Hutton with was looking at continuing that seal down the back of the island between 21st and 41st, specifically with elevating the path, the multi-use path.
Yep.
And they have kind of preliminarily identified all of the outfalls that would need to be sealed. And those are easier projects. They're not nearly to the, not nearly the work that would be required for the other three. But their plan for that project does call for backflow preventers on all of the remaining outfalls between 21st and 41st.
A lot of preventers.
Yes. So that work is continuing. It's pretty interesting what they are finding, and they're kind of doing the work of determining where the right level of protection is, how much bang for the buck can they get. I think that they're indicating now that they feel like 6 feet of elevation, which translates to basically a 9-1 tide, is the magic number where it's doable and somewhat affordable, but gives the highest level of protection to the most houses. So, Rick, to your point, I think that there are additional projects looking at more outfalls, but at the end of the day, I think financing is going to be, we're planning ourselves out to a horizon that may be too far out at this point. With just the outfalls and the path, I think we're probably financially tapping about all we can afford to do. But I think this long-range plan would help us to prioritize the future work.
Sounds good to me.
So everybody good with leaving 562? And I would say that I think that's well, currently I think that it's assigned, funded, we're green, and I think a measure of its success would be once we have a comprehensive drainage study in hand, I think would be when we're successful.
That's good.
Next one, 563, consider funding options, including special assessments to address drainage problems. I don't really remember the idea of adding special assessments, which to me would say, I think of that as being akin to what happens in Wild Dunes for renourishment, where the directly the areas directly benefit from it pay for it. On this note, I will say that you probably will recall that the city did increase the stormwater fee. Now, I guess it was 2 years ago. So that's providing a pool of money to help us with drainage projects. Also, we have been trying to identify grants that we could use. I think we've just heard back, unfortunately in the negative, on a grant request for the Outfalls project. Madison Hutton, though, has a staff person assigned to looking for these grant opportunities. They have put together, I think, 2 requests for us so far. So I think we're being pretty aggressive in pursuing grants. So I might advocate that on that one, we eliminate mention of a special assessment.
Yeah.
And maybe substitute language about grants.
I would agree.
Me too.
I think we're green. If I was giving a status on this one, I'd say we're green. Measure of success would be successfully securing funding. I don't know that I can say that strategy is necessarily funded. I think it is work that's being done, but I don't know that it's uniquely funded in our budget. I think it just kind of happens under the umbrella of the city staff working with Thomas and Hutton.
What did you say to replace assessments with, Douglas?
Grant request. Or grant opportunities is probably the best term.
Okay.
Is everybody generally good with that one?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. 564, city should continue to work to remain in compliance with the National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, NPDES for short. This is the program that Charleston County administers for the city. We really don't have a choice. I mean, this is a mandate from the EPA, so it's not, you can't really say should continue to remain. I think we must, is the way I would see it. But we're in good shape. Charleston County really does the lion's share of handling this for us. And I would say that we remain in good shape on that front. That is funded. We're green. Measure of success is maintaining compliance. That is funded. And maybe in the notes, we just note that Charleston County is handling that for us. On that one, I think we're in pretty good shape there. Any comments? Any comments? Are we ready to move on to 5.7?
Yep.
Move on.
All right. 5.7. Provide comprehensive and reasonably priced marina services to the public, consistent with considerations of the neighborhood location. Any thoughts on this one? I'll be fully loaded. I don't know.
Yeah, that one's loaded.
I'd say.
I think that I've heard the critique, it may be a valid critique, that property is somewhat, I mean, the pricing, I think, is probably outside of the city's control. I mean, it might be, and maybe I'm wrong on that, but if hypothetically, if somebody were to say, hey, it's in your comprehensive plan that it's not, that it remain reasonably priced down there, these services, and in our opinion, it's not reasonably priced, I don't know that the city would be in a position to do much about it. So,
Well, what does that even mean? And also, what does comprehensive mean?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the definition of comprehensive or reasonably priced? That's going to vary depending on the person. I don't like this one at all.
There's no control.
Yeah, I don't like this one at all.
There's nothing we can do about it.
So what do we want to do? Do we want to reword it, or do we want to strike it, or what do we want to do?
I think we should reword it to something like maximum use of the property or optimum use of the property to the best of what we're capable of doing.
I don't know if I like maximum use of the property either. I think
No, optimum.
I like that word. Okay. To provide.
do you think we have any more control over? I mean, again, I think I would have the same.
Is this, I mean, yeah, let me chime in. Do we really have control? I think that goes back to, this is governed by leases and it's governed by what the council has approved already. We're locked in for several years on most of this. So is
Several
this,
years?
pardon me?
Several? Like 40?
Not 25. I think 2045 is the key date here. So this is, I think what we're kind of saying is this is sort of an uncontrollable feature for this horizon in the comprehensive plan. And should this even be, we don't have control over this.
Yeah,
Well, we don't have control over how the tenants operate, but we do have control over who we select as tenant.
Correct, but not for another, I mean, after today, not for another 25 years. So is it really about providing, is part of the comprehensive plan about providing a safe and enjoyable environment there as opposed to talking about competitive prices?
Right.
And things of that nature. Maybe we scope this a little bit more to what is a controllable goal and strategy as opposed to something that may not be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's kind of where my mind is that we don't have, I think that to me, it would be reasonable to give a point of reference at which the decision should be looked at from, in other words, it appears that there are constantly kind of judgments being made about what's the, and to go back to Rick used the term optimum balance of things down there. What's the, and maybe when questions came up that the real property committee is considering down there, maybe there could be some framework.
And maybe there's sort of the holistic and then there's the tactical, but it seems to me like the fate of the marina, and I think the last couple of years it's moved into a direction that seems to be, we're going to get things are going to get refreshed. There's going to be resident access, which was a big goal of the original purchase. And maybe it's more about the quality of the services, and it seems like those are moving into an improvement mode.
Well, and to kind of continue down that train of thought, I hadn't really thought about it till you mentioned that, but by the time, so currently there's a lease that's about to be executed. There is work that I think right on the heels of that lease, construction crews show up for a large component of it. There is there's a work on the potential green space, which has become available as a result of a lease expiring down there that you all have weighed in on the use of the tree fund. But I would anticipate that most, if not all of that work will be done and kind of set probably before this plan makes its way out into the world. And are we kind of drafting something that will arrive after its usefulness? So
And maybe this whole goal should be centered around, quality of the services and the safety of the services as opposed to pricing and competitive.
Absolutely.
But how do we control the quality of the services? I'm not quite sure I understand.
Well, good point, Lisa. Maybe quality is not the right word, but impact to the neighbors and things of that nature. I mean, this is going to be, go ahead.
I think it goes back to the leases, and we have to enforce the leases that are in place and make sure that they are doing the things that, fit all of our NORS ordinance and all of those sort of things, which I would think some of that language is already in the leases. If not, I think we need to stress those points. But I mean, a lease is a lease. You can't change it unless they agree to change it. So the only things that we have any control over whatsoever, in my opinion, are things like that are addressed in our regular code anyway: noise, lighting, those sorts of things. So I guess.
So are you saying that maybe in the last, with these last leases in the green space, everything's pretty much locked down until 2045? Is it really a matter of just optimizing what we have down there?
Exactly.
Then maybe perhaps this is an obsolete goal.
I think it is.
what,
Because we can't change it at all, what's happening down there.
Just
Once
put a
they sign the
revisit- just put a
restaurant lease.
revisit in 2045, is that what we do?
Yeah,
Not
But
me.
as a
Maybe y'all,
landlord,
not me.
That's probably beyond my timeline, yeah.
as a landlord, we do have the purpose and responsibility to maintain the fact that our tenants are operating to their lease. So,
Exactly.
if they are not performing well at the marina, who knows what they're doing? They run out of gas. They're not getting some for a while. We can't do anything about it, but we can pressure them to resolve that. As hopefully the lease has some language in there that requires a certain level of operation. Or
So is the goal maybe more around collaborating with the tenants to sort of optimize the experience and the quality of the experience? Sorry, Lisa, the quality's a nebulous word there, I guess, but somehow maybe change this around so that we're working with the current tenants to make it the best experience for the residents and the visitors.
So
I think that's a better goal. Yeah.
yeah, I was following on what Scott's saying is if you eliminated 5.7, 5.71 and just stayed with 5.7.2, which talks about monitoring just what
Yes.
you're saying,
Right.
what's happening at the marina, and looking at the business makeup, then that's probably all we need to do at this point.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think we have some other responsibility, and that is the city has responsibility for maintenance down, for some maintenance requirements. So it is working with the tenants to ensure that they are doing their part, but also that the city is doing their part. So I'm not quite sure how we word that, but it is, like you were saying, Vince, it's a collaboration between the city and the tenants to ensure that the leases are being adhered to and the experience is the best that it can be down there.
And Lisa, you get into the maintenance and the other issues with managing that all those leases there in 5.8.
Right.
5.81 starts to hit on the facilities, safety, physical condition.
Well, and what is there something we should say about the city working with the tenants on the compliance and the reviews and ensuring that the leases are as intended? I don't know if that's more of a strategy. But I think you're monitoring that quite a bit, aren't you, Douglas, through the building and planning group anyway?
Well, and I wonder if it wouldn't be in goal 5.8 of just protecting the investments in real
Right.
property.
That's right.
I'm wondering, I guess, if the planning commission wanted a marina goal that's kind of outside of the more generic goal of just in protecting the city's investments, maybe it would be to encourage. I mean, I think as a landlord, there would probably potentially be opportunities to encourage and support efforts of the tenants that worked well in the eyes of, I guess, the residents and maybe that could be, maybe the goal would be providing support to, or I don't know if it would be encouragement, but I guess as a landlord, we provide support for marina services that benefit the island's residents and visitors. And then maybe, I guess the strategy of being a good landlord and being maybe under 5.8, but if we wanted to, we could put in a strategy about being a good landlord.
I don't think we need 5.7 at all. I think we just need to enhance 5.8 because that's really where we are, is we want to do what we can as a landlord, but also encourage our tenants to enhance the city's investment. I mean, enhance and maintain, not just enhance, but maintain the city's investment.
I agree with Lisa. I think 5.7 is kind of
Well,
run its course.
think of as just kind of a case study and an exercise for conversation. Think of this current effort with the green space that's coming up. You know, I think that if we take it out, we would just say, yes, just deal with those little tiny issues as they come up, and it doesn't elevate itself to being need to being included in the comprehensive plan. That's one tact. The other tact could be that, yes, there should be a plug in there that says something to the effect of when the opportunity comes up to do something nice that benefits the residents, i.e. a stretch of green space. If something else like that was to come up elsewhere, that you use that opportunity and use this document to give guidance to future decision makers. So I guess that I would see that being the two choices. One, deal with them, be silent in the comprehensive plan, deal with them on a case-by-case basis. Two, putting a little blurb in there about encouraging, working with the tenants and have a blurb in there. I think I'm hearing at least Lisa and Rick saying, go silent on it and just refer kind of all matters to 5.8. And when the question of green space came up, the comprehensive plan would have been silent on that. Well, actually, we do also have the little green space section in the comprehensive plan. So
Yeah, we do.
Anybody else have thoughts?
Yeah, I can understand what the intent was with 5.7, but I do feel that it may have outlived its usefulness.
I tend to agree myself.
Yeah.
I think it's just too ambiguous to begin with. I mean, what's a competitive price? What's a professional service? What's the highest level of professional services? And who, that's in the eyes of the beholder.
I'm kind of with you. Now, Vince, were you suggesting maybe cutting and pasting 5.7.2 and trying to bake it into one of the other?
Yeah, I think so. I don't really know if we can, I mean, it truly is the role of the city, since we own it, to actually select tenants and businesses that kind of mirror and reflect the community. So if it's picked up somewhere else in our document, I think that's great to have something specific to that. I don't know if we really need to do that. So yes, to answer your question, I think that you probably could move it to somewhere else or add it to somewhere else.
I think it would fit pretty well, right at, 586. Just shift it.
Mhm.
585 is already talking about the kind of marina corridor.
There you go.
I think it would fit pretty nicely there. If we wanted to just eliminate the goal, eliminate strategy 571 and shift 572 to 586.
On this may be a nuance, but on the wording on that, where it says changes to the marina business makeup to expand marina service consistent, maybe the changes and improvements that we want to, I think one of the issues we've had down there is the sort of expansion. It only has, it's got a finite space.
I'll be back in 5.
Okay. So maybe the mix and, where it says about assessing potential improvements and changes would cover it without having to assume everything has to be expanded.
Right.
Maybe the word expand gets changed to just improve.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
that's-
like that.
Doesn't necessarily need to be an expansion. That's a good point.
There you go.
Okay.
All right, I think I heard consensus on that. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I think
Marty, I don't know if you're cutting and pasting can keep up with it.
I think I got it.
Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question? Coastal Expeditions, are they a subleaser to the marina, or do they lease directly from the city?
They rent from the
Sublease.
It's a sub.
sub, yes.
So we have two major leases: the marina itself and the restaurant.
That's correct.
Three.
I think
We
that
have 3 leases.
Brian technically has 2 of the leases.
Right.
The marina and in the store is a separate one, I think.
Okay.
But I
But
think
we have the ability as a landlord, just as another point here, the landlord has the ability to agree or disagree with any subtenant. They don't have the absolute right to lease
Sure.
to somebody without our approval.
Yeah.
I don't know when that happened or what, and I'm not saying there's a problem with it. I'm just saying we still have the right as a landlord to approve any subtenant that may come on the premises.
You say that, Lisa, but that's not in their lease agreement. There's nothing in there that says they can't sublease as much as they want to.
There isn't anything in that lease. Are you sure?
That's why he continued to do what he wants to do.
Well, I would like to say that I've never seen a lease in my entire 35 years of commercial real estate that didn't have a provision for that, but maybe I'm wrong,
Have you ever seen one where they have no accountability for their overages?
No, no, I have never seen a lease written like the leases for sure, but that's a discussion for another day, I think.
Or 25 times 365.
Maybe in 2045, that's a discussion to be had.
That's right.
All right, are we ready? I think I heard consensus, I think.
Yes.
yeah.
So we don't have a 5.7 anymore.
Correct.
One more
So-
5-7.
So 5.8
Correct.
is now going to be 5.7.
I might continue to call it the. Is that going to throw anybody off if I keep calling them?
No,
No.
I found myself getting too confused and trying to reference the new
Yep.
number. We'll wait until we're on a clean copy. So that brings us to 5.8, protect and enhance the city's investment in real property. I think that kind of goes almost without saying, but I think it's a good goal. Strategy 5.8.1, periodically review and update baseline facilities assessment of the marina complex to ensure conditions of the facility are monitored for safety, physical condition, and utility. So that baseline facility assessment is a document that the city's consultant put together prior to the referendum, where they went through and they identified all of the deficiencies at the facility. And some of them were pretty bad. I mean, some of them were in the category of kind of imminent failure. Other were kind of like out on the 5-year horizon. You need to do this. I do think that the work at the docks that's getting ready to, the work at the docks and the work at the restaurant were the big ones. On the cities, well, the restaurant's not happening on the city's tab, but the docks and the bulkhead are really the big ones on the city's end of things. So I think we're in good shape there, but I think that it is something, it's just an ongoing thing. I mean, the bulkhead and the facilities down there are going to constantly need work. So maybe it's going to be less kind of impactful in the future because most of this work will be done, but it probably still warrants being in the plan.
Agree.
Any thoughts on that? Just leave it in there.
Yes. Leave it in.
Okay, 582, make plans to set aside funds for future year maintenance and capital improvements that will be required to meet and maximize the city's investment.
In what?
Well, I think that's in all of our real property. And that is also, I think, and maybe it's not well stated there, but the city has in their budgeting here in the last few years set aside funds for each building to kind of cover the ongoing maintenance at each building, and has what I would call a capital improvement plan of when to replace, HVAC systems, siding, that type of stuff.
Right.
I think that's what that's geared at.
But I think it needs to say invest in to protect and maximize the city's investment in all real property or something.
Put down that we have a maintenance reserve. That's basically what it is.
Yes. Shall we say in there and continue to, in all real property, and continue to contribute to a maintenance fund? Contribute to a maintenance fund?
Well, capital improvements and maintenance are different things, or usually in accounting they are anyway. Do y'all have a separate budget for maintenance as opposed and capital improvements?
Yes.
I don't know if are the funds set aside for so for example, for right now, we're having to go out and borrow instead of having those for the repairs at the marina and things of that nature versus set asides. If those monies were set aside, we wouldn't be borrowing.
That's correct.
So
yeah, it's a much smaller, it is things like routine maintenance on buildings that's actively being set aside. The council has done it for large purchases, fire equipment. I think here recently they've opted to borrow what they set aside. I'm sorry, borrow and use what they've set aside in a different fashion. But
I think the marina is kind of an example where for the next 25 years, so right now we're going to upgrade the marina, but for the next 25 years, there's going to be depletion on the those docks again. And at some point, they'll have to be redone again. But we're not going to, unless there's money set aside, we'll end up having to borrow it again to replenish what's going to occur over the next 20 or 25 years. And I don't think because of the situation we're in with the leases, we can't really generate that kind of funding out of the leases. So is this something we can do, or is the marina a special situation?
Well, I don't think
I think it's more of a set aside for the well, I don't even know, that would be under maintenance, I guess, though. So is this something we really, there's a small percentage for building maintenance, but is there money for, say, drainage maintenance and dock maintenance and any other maintenance being set aside? That's a question. I don't know the answer to that.
I think it's kind of, I think some of those projects, they get identified and they start saving and putting it into a sinking fund, you know, for several years prior. I do think that here most recently, you know, that they've opted for whatever reason to borrow instead of use that money. I tend to believe that those decisions being made about whether you borrow the money or you use the money that you've saved, I don't know that, I think that the council should probably have flexibility to analyze whichever is most advantageous at that time. And
I guess I just envision this, Douglas. I think Lisa, you hit on it. For capital improvements, there's usually a deliberate sinking fund for something like that.
Exactly.
I don't think we have that necessarily here for all of the capital improvements. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's a great goal and it's a great strategy. I don't know under current circumstances on the near horizon if we're able to do that with the financial constraints.
I mean, I think a capital improvement is usually something much more substantial than maintenance. In other words, it's something, and I'm not sure what the city's number is because everybody gets to kind of set their own number, but you know, anything above, you know, say $5,000 would be a capital improvement versus, you know, a $2,000 or a $500, you know, maintenance item. So if you're, you know, if you have a schedule that is laid out and it says, okay, we know that the average life of an air conditioner is going to be, I'm going to make this up because I'm not sure, 10 years. Then we have a sinking fund that we work towards replacing all the air conditioners in the public safety building, for instance, or the rec department or wherever it is. And we do take a small amount of money and set it aside for that. Now, whether they borrow, you know, I do agree that they should have some flexibility to determine, you know, how to use the funds, but we can't use them if we don't have them set aside. So I think it's important to have a sinking fund of some sort for roof replacements, HVAC maintenance, dock replacements, whatever it might be. And I don't consider that maintenance. I consider some of that capital improvements. But, you know, painting buildings, all of that stuff, replacing a roof on the public safety building, which hopefully we won't have to do anytime soon, that's a big expenditure. And I would hate to see us borrow money for something like that.
Yeah.
well, I think that the way the strategy is written, I think what I'm hearing is that the group feels like it should be set aside. I think it is already set aside for maintenance, and some capital improvements do, some have not. But I think the way the strategy is written currently is probably how you're saying it should be done. Now, whether or not council is doing that may be a different story.
I don't think it should say make plans. I think it should be to do this, not just to make plans to do this.
So just take out the words make plans to and just say set aside.
Exactly.
I agree.
I'm good with it.
I like that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
It is done.
All right. Strategy 583, aggressively pursue grants or other external funding sources that will enhance the safety, environmental conditions, facilities, or other features of the marina. I mean, that kind of is interesting to me that it's specific to
Just
the
the marina.
Yeah,
Why just the marina? Why shouldn't this be for all of our?
Maybe we just take that out, the specific
This was
reference.
reviewed during the last marina thing,
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah, and maybe we just make it generic.
They were trying to find other ways, alternative sources to help maybe pay for some of that.
So-
That's
I mean,
kind of where that paragraph came from.
I'm okay with the goal, but I think it should be for all of real properties.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just make it generic. Yeah.
To change feature or other features of the marina to all facilities of the city, all real
Yeah.
property.
Yeah.
All real property.
Yep.
Marty, you good with that?
I'm with you.
Okay. 584, develop plans for continuous maintenance, repair of city's various buildings such as City Hall, the Public Safety Building, Fire Station 2, the Rec Center, and the Public Works Building. This is certainly something that's ongoing.
Yes.
I think that we're in pretty good shape here. Everybody good with that? Just staying
Yep.
as it?
Yep.
I would say, Marty, for the sheet, I think we're green there, and this is kind of part of the nuts and bolts of the funding. I mean, the budgeting exercise every year. We all kind of identify what the various needs are of the building. So I think we're doing that, we're funding that, and we're on green, I think. Everybody's good with that. We'll go to 585, develop a beautification plan for the marina complex on the lower 41st Avenue corridor to include vegetation, signage, beautification, and architectural scheme. Remember, this strategy is a pre-referendum strategy, so that one may be out, I guess.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
but you could still, talk about, maintaining the beauty of the marina, and I don't think you need a plan for it. But I guess you're also picking it up when you're maintaining the buildings and other things, and you're maintaining the marina.
Well, architectural scheme, I would think,
Yeah.
does that still fit?
We also, as we've already mentioned, there's this work to creating a green space down there, but I think that green space will basically be, it will be there and at some point kind of created probably before this planning, this comprehensive plan gets fully adopted. So it'll probably be a strategy. If we were to talk about it, it would probably be a dated strategy at the time of the adoption of the plan.
Right. So we may just want to delete this
I
5.8.5.
think it should go away.
I
Yeah.
agree.
All right, let's delete that one.
I love the next one.
Ensure maximum financial return on the marina facilities consistent with the goals that we just went over.
Yeah.
Did we leave any?
Again, how are we going to ensure this? How do you I guess the measure is financial return, but how do you ensure this? You got a lease that's says what it is.
Yeah, one of the things we could do, it gets back to the whole, just the compliance on the leases. If we're gonna, I think one of the sticking points over the last several years or recent years has been not necessarily performing just general lease audits and reviews and collaborating with the tenants to ensure that we're getting what the IOP is supposed to be at. I mean, is this more of a compliance to the only way we can maximize our returns is go through the compliance exercises.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's really the only, I guess I would question whether or not it's appropriate to have a comprehensive plan to
Address that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to take this out, I'm okay with that.
But I think you're right. I think that's basically what that strategy is just ensure proper reporting and compliance with the leases.
Well, I'm okay with that part.
Maybe it's monitor instead of ensure.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
maximum.
Yeah, I mean,
Monitor.
yeah. I see what you're saying, Lisa, where there's really nothing left to negotiate for another 25 years. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, 5.91, none of that is appropriate anymore. But I do think we should obviously monitor the leases and responsibilities under the lease to ensure that they are doing what they need to do as lessees. But aside from that, we can't insure anything really. We can only monitor for compliance.
Yeah.
Do we feel like that needs to be in the comp or not?
Oh, it couldn't hurt.
Okay.
Well, this is the only piece of property that we have leases, and it's the only opportunity in the comp plan to even talk about it. So it's the only time we're making money.
I would keep it open to other leases. There's always the chance that someday on the triangle piece of property or the telephone company,
Right.
post office.
Maybe it would be the commercial facilities of the island, whatever they may be in the enterprise funds or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we're very focused on the marina, but there's a world outside the marina.
Right. I don't think
Yes.
the marina should be I agree. It should be all assets.
All real property facilities. It could be the rec center. It could be
Right.
Well, it's conceivable you could have a lease at the rec center. It really is. I mean, you could have somebody come in and lease a small portion of that.
Sure.
I don't know.
So
if
I think we should take out the marina and just make it all real property or
real
all.
property facilities. That's a good idea, Lisa. Yeah.
So I had jotted down that we wanted to modify ensure maximum financial return to something akin to monitor.
Yes.
That obviously monitor indicates there's an existing lease, which I guess indicates just the marina facility. So are we looking for wording to kind of go back to broaden it? Because monitor wouldn't be appropriate term for some future opportunity that hadn't come up yet. Right?
Well, is it something, that we want to, maybe there's some revenue opportunities from the current facilities that we haven't explored yet. Maybe we do take a look at that. And I talk about all the facilities, not just the marina.
Well, I think you could leave the wording ensure maximum financial return on the real property. I think you can still use that language if you want to change it to real property.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm just objecting to it with just
Or
the
just the
marina.
marina. Yeah, I think you're right, Lisa.
And then we'll take those goals out since we've eliminated those goals, correct?
Right.
I mean, I'm sorry,
Yes.
we're consistent with 5.7 and 5.8. Those two have been eliminated.
Yeah.
So we'll strike that. And then we want one strategy to be just monitor compliance with existing leaseholders.
Yep.
Sure.
So the goal would be maximize financial return on all real properties.
Yes, without
Yes.
any
Let's see.
5.7 or 5.8.
Okay.
Or ensure
And then-
reasonable return.
You
I'm
want,
sorry, Rick,
you
what
want the
did you-
word ensure left in there? Because I took it out. Did you just say add it back?
Well, I was thinking more of saying reasonable financial return rather than maximum.
Mm.
Okay.
Well,
Maximum, you're going after, you're counting pennies.
You're back to the language that kind of implicates expansion and cramming. as much-
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, be careful with that.
well, and I think reasonable is also, there could be a trade-off. Sometimes you're not, like you said, you're not going for maximum return.
Exactly.
which has been part of the problem with the marina, up to this part.
Right.
Is
Never use the word optimum. That seemed to be a good middle ground.
okay.
Optimize.
Optimize financial return.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah, I like that.
And then we want to have one of the strategies about monitoring the existing lease terms for compliance.
Monitor compliance.
Monitor compliance of existing lease terms.
Yep.
And then a second strategy.
Maybe instead of constantly review, how about benchmark, something about benchmarking prevailing rates and fees for services?
That gets back to the marina's rate.
Why are we doing it?
Yeah, you don't.
Okay, all right.
Why are we benchmarking or monitoring if we can't change it? I guess is my question.
Just to get us
I'm
mad.
just looking 2 decades ahead, Lisa.
Just to make everybody mad?
Yep.
So how about,
That's probably beyond our planning horizon here.
all right, how about so we've added the monitor lease strategy.
Yep.
So that would still leave this idea that other city facilities could be used for some financial return. So maybe that is a rework of 591 to say encourage imaginative proposals for businesses that will enhance revenues to the city utilizing existing cities' properties. Basically something that says, and I guess here my mind is going to, we talked about the rec center. I don't know if any of you were around for Ted Kinghorn kind of brainstorming about before we opted to just renovate the existing bathroom at the front beach. He was thinking that there could be some kind of facility down there that would be, a community facility at the beach that could be rented out, used for events, that type thing. So I think it would be something, if there was some other means to make money at the city's property, I think it would be some imaginative proposal.
Well, think about one thing we may do. I don't know. I have no idea where it's going to go, but the sewer system, for example, we may wind up leasing right away or easements to the Water and Sewer Commission to run their pipes.
Well, I was thinking more of the rec center, honestly. There's a lot of land out there. People have talked about pools and all that. Well, the city doesn't actually have to install the pool on their nickel. I don't know this would happen, but what if an outside party came to us and
There
said,
you go.
we'll
Yeah.
build a pool. We want a long-term lease on the land. We'll build
Yeah.
a pool, or maybe another facility. Like Douglas was saying, maybe a facility that would be rented out. We would want the opportunity to do that and to continue to monitor opportunities like that. So I think the strategy.
Yeah, I mean, there've been some talk, I think where you're going, Lisa, too, about, can the rec center morph into maybe a community center, which can generate a whole lot more revenue than just the strict rec center, where you can have seminars and conferences and
Sure.
it's a beautiful facility that may be underutilized. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we may want to lease to an outside party that would come in and do some sort of program, or like you said, maybe just a conference. I'm not sure what it would be, but I think there's a lot of opportunity on that land down there that I do believe that is underutilized, unlike the marina. That
Wedding venue. People waste
Yeah.
a lot of money on weddings.
to do that.
Yeah, and have a soccer game afterwards. Yeah.
The large city lot at the front, well, 2 large city lots at the front beach area, there have been talks about possibility of a parking garage but then there's also been talk about sharing that space with somebody else that would build the parking garage in exchange for them getting some use of it. So
Exactly.
Public-private partnership there. Yeah.
would something to the effect of encourage imaginative proposals using city property that will enhance revenues to the city.
Yeah,
That captures it. Yeah.
works.
Yep.
Marty,
Using
did you
city
get that?
properties or facilities?
I would say properties.
Properties.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right, so we've got optimize financial return on all real properties as a goal. Well, let's say 5.9 still. Strategy 5.9.1 would be encourage imaginative proposals from businesses using city properties that will enhance revenues to the city. Is that right?
Yep.
And then 5.9.2 is monitor existing leases for compliance.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that wraps up the goal. It does, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
The end of the goals. You all, I'm not sure how you want to tackle the bulk of the text, or really all of the text in that section. This is the section that talks about wastewater treatment. And I wanted to just, a lot of it, I think, so if we could just kind of go through high level. Public safety, I don't know if there's a lot that is going to change there. We talked about, I think that the biggest topic that the police deal with that are going to kind of impact this plan is the traffic element. And I think we have, I don't know if we've agreed, but in my mind, we have put those complexities in the transportation element. So I don't know that we would get to the, we're really talking about the facilities here. And I think that we've talked about the traffic issue as being in the transportation element. So if you're good with that theory, I think there's not a lot that changes in the community facilities section. There is somewhat what I would consider dated information, dated detail about transitioning to the consolidated dispatch center. That was kind of front and center for several years. Now I think we're kind of past that. I don't know that folks really necessarily care that much about where their 911 calls go to. So I was thinking we may want to consider just deleting that. I mean, we could potentially leave a sentence there, but it's currently a paragraph. Water sources, just kind of flipping through the plan, water sources, that has not really changed. We still get the water from CPW, Charleston Water Service. It's still the same pipes. And then we have wastewater treatment and drainage are the big, to me, those are the two big elements in here that potentially we should focus on. Electric and telephone, parks and recreation, public properties, we've pretty well, there is a section in there on the marina. If it's okay with the group, I think I would like for you all to consider giving me kind of your consensus on the issues of how to treat septic and sewer as one issue, and then secondly, how to treat stormwater, the drainage element. Give me that feedback, and then I would propose that I would just go back and make editorial comments and changes in the rest of the plan and try to kind of synthesize whatever your positions are and how we should treat drainage and septic systems. That's okay. Let's just talk generally about the big change for us in this regard is I think the Planning Commission has done a tremendous amount of work on the need to expand public sewer. Would the group be comfortable with us putting that kind of front and center as a goal, basically as something that needs to happen? We have done, and for those of you that are newer, there's a pretty lengthy recommendation and compilation of information about sewering the island. We have a master plan now. I would think that we could reference that in this component and just talk about the data points that it brings up, how much it costs, that we're anticipating kind of smaller incremental expansions and not a wholesale expansion. Is that still kind of the will of the group? Is that the direction we want to go? Basically say we're gonna slowly and systematically expand sewer until every resident has it?
Well, that's great.
What about, okay, that's the optimum, I think, saying boom, we're gonna do the island. But what about looking more deeply into the ordinances that we've already established? The nurturing ordinances, you may want to call them, nurturing people to go in the right direction with regard to sewage. Maybe looking at some more, extending the line, property line requirement or from the tap in, maybe a few other items to kind of move this thing along on a slow pace, even though we see there's a big one coming someday.
Mm-hmm.
I think to me, that's clearly been the direction of the Planning Commission and the council, is that's the only realistic way it's going to happen. Slow.
Yeah. Douglas, is there a way, I think your first question is, should we combine the sewer and septic? I think, are we all okay with that?
Yes.
Everybody okay? Okay.
And then the second thing on the septic conversion to sewer, it seems like one of the biggest hurdles, and the commission's done a lot of work on the percentage on a lot build and such, but it's the barrier to connect. It always seems like the biggest barrier is the cost to connect.
Yes.
And until we address that problem or that challenge and figure out a way to crack that nut, does it slow down progress to connect? Sounds like the answer is an overwhelming yes. And should we maybe spend a little bit of time figuring out or talking about solutions that either other communities have done or some concepts that might help encourage people so that the first one in a neighborhood or first one on the street to connect doesn't have to pay 80% of the freight? And there are ways to potentially do that. So it seems to me like one way to accelerate connection to the sewer would be to figure out a way to alleviate the cost to connect.
The strategy, the way it looks right now, is they're going to put a sewer system in, and there it is. You got to connect. You got to connect because it's there.
So that means we build the highway without the off ramps and spend all that money, and we have no mechanism to force people to connect.
Wait, the first car on the highway pays the price.
Yeah. So that, I mean, as long as I've been here, I've been here 2 decades, 3 decades, but the horror stories of one person gets an estimate that it's going to take $75,000 to connect to the sewer, where I think our house was roughly $6,000, which is a more manageable number. is there a way to potentially figure out how to equalize that over, over, what do we have, 1,400 connections that we need to achieve? Maybe there are ways to do that because there are homes still being built that are putting in septics. Is that not true?
That's true.
Yeah, so, until we can figure out, maybe there's a way to incentivize or equalize the cost so that we've got a standard entry cost or impact fee that everybody can afford. And there are ways to do that. There are definitely ways to do that. They might not all be popular, but maybe we talk about a few of those and just see what they might look like.
I mean, we can give an exclusive license. We could give an exclusive license to a plumber and say, you set the fixed price for a connection, no matter where it is.
Right.
And you got the business, and you got 1,400 connections over a period of 10 years or whatever, and let him. And then he has to.
Yeah, the cost to connect is one hurdle, which if we could standardize or equalize that so that somebody, 200 yards away can pay the same that somebody that's closer. But then you've got somebody that just built a brand new house with a perfectly working septic system. Why would they ever want to convert, and why should we make them? I mean, I don't know. I'm just asking. I don't know that is that even a worthy goal to go ask somebody to do that when they have a perfectly working brand new system?
There's no way there's no way that you're going to be able to look somebody straight in the eye and say, this is a good deal.
Okay, so then are there hotspots that have aged, seeping 30-year systems that need to be upgraded that we might be able to find a way to incentivize them to hook up to the sewer system? So we know we should be able to target those specifically and figure out what that equalized connection fee is. And it's going to be better for them to go connect, come up with a price that makes it more attractive to connect to the sewer than it does to replace their septic.
Well, I think the problem here, we've gone through this a lot, Scott. Believe me when I tell you, we've spent a lot of hours on this one.
Years.
We have years.
Well, that's why I'm saying maybe, first the problem I'd solve for is what do we all believe, or what does, and again, I'm just tossing scenarios about what would be a palatable price to hook up to the sewer system? 5,000, 10,000?
Well, no, the question comes before that. How do you incentivize somebody to hook up in the first place, no matter what the price?
I'm going to go back to lease. I'm going to go back to lease. Is it price or?
Well, if the connection fee was zero, let's say no connection fee, somebody was going to come in and just do it because they're a nice guy. You still have to pay now.
Right.
You weren't paying before, but now with this brand new zero cost sewer system, you're paying.
Yeah.
So tell me why I'm doing this. Give me a reason to do this.
Seems to me the vast majority of the 1,400 people that don't have public sewer are perfectly happy with the system they currently have.
I would be.
There's a minority of them that have an issue with it, but it's certainly not 1,400.
Okay, so you've answered the question. Why are we going after 1,400 sewer systems?
We're
The
not.
only reason to do that is thinking in the future it's going to be an environmental issue.
Where in the future? I mean, why is it an environmental future if these septic systems are perfectly?
I'm not going to argue that, but I don't
know
what
problem
it is.
now.
The theory is that eventually the EPA or DHEC will start mandating that you go off of your septic tank.
I disagree with that.
Yeah, I do too. I think that's where does that come from?
I think that the one argument.
That's what Mark said the other day when we met with them.
I know he said that, and I disagreed with it then too.
You'd have to do that. You'd have to do that countrywide. I mean, you can't just pick an island and say you're going to have to go
He's closer to the issues than we are. Obviously he has an incentive to say that, but he's closer to the ideas than we are.
And their reasoning for doing that, to get back to what we all talked about years ago when we started this, was that, at some point we continue to have flooding, and we continue to have these 100-year floods that are now more like 10-year floods, and septic systems continue to fail because of the flooding. And the more people that move here that are not used to septics and not used to them failing are the ones that are asking, how do I tie into the sewer? because I'm tired of this backing up into my play area where my kids are. We need to do something about it. And at some point in time, we're gonna get past all of that, and we're gonna really have flooding on a regular basis at least every year, and every year have the failures, and those 1,400 people will have be clamoring for a sewer hookup because they're tired of having a porta potty out front.
Is it all 1,400, Vince, or do we have hotspots on the island that are more susceptible?
My guess is there's hotspots on the island that are more susceptible, and that's not a guess. That we know that for sure.
Okay. So how do we, I guess my question is, rather than try to build, and I'm just gonna toss some numbers out here, was the super highway for the infrastructure roughly, what, 50-something $million?
Correct.
Okay, and I think I've tossed around these numbers, some of the other folks here. So the off ramps, if we've got 1,400 times what, $20,000, just call it a round number, that's another $28 million. And then you got maintenance over 20, 25 years at, whatever, all of a sudden you're running up against the $100 million price tag.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so realistically, where does that money come from? And instead of swallowing the elephant, should we try to hit the hot spots over the next decade and plan on that, as opposed to trying to figure out, unless we get a federal grant or something, we're just chasing a fantasy and we're going to keep chasing it. We can't afford it. That's the bottom line, I think, unless I'm smoking the drapes here.
No, you're spot on. I mean, and some of the thought was, organically this will grow. I put in a pipe to tie to the sewer system, and my neighbor's tied into my pipe. And at some other point, some other neighbor is going to tie into it. And you pay that limited price to not go as far as you need to tie into the sewer system. But to get back to your point, I think that we've had this discussion with the Water and Sewer Commission about the hot spots. They've identified the hot spots. Everybody knows that, but we just haven't been able to come up with a way to do that.
Okay, so back to my question, what do we think would be and I'm just for discussion's sake here, what would be a reasonable price or an impact fee for somebody to hook up to a system that has a septic today? That needs replacement, that doesn't want to deal with that anymore, that would love to get on the sewer system. Is it $5 grand, 10 grand, 15? I don't know the answer to that.
I can tell you what I paid. I paid over $30,000 to do that. That was that important to me to do that. So, that's me, and that may be reasonable to me, but it's certainly not reasonable to other people on the island. So it's a matter of what you're willing to pay to do that.
Douglas, you're out there all the time. What do you hear?
What does Mount Pleasant do? I know that they don't have septic so much, but what do they charge for a sewer impact fee?
Well, I know that our impact, I do actually have that number somewhere. I do know that we are one of the highest, just the impact fee. So Scott, just for round math, if we said that 50 million, the whole project's 50 million, there's 1,440 some odd pieces that need to tie in, parcels that need to tie in. So if that's around that 1,500 properties, it comes to $33,000 each.
But that wasn't for the off ramps, from what I heard.
That did not include connecting to it.
Yeah, that's going to be that literally is a pipe from your house that goes to it. So that would be another $1,500 or so.
And then you have to secure your septic tank or dispose of it.
Yeah.
And then you got to pay every month.
What would be wrong with the Water and Sewer Commission taking over responsibility for the existing septic tanks? If we could enforce something like that, where they would do the pumping of them, the inspecting of them, they would learn which ones are failing or likely to fail in the future. And from that, they could deduce where the public sewer needs to be installed first. Is that something you think you could ever? I mean, council tried to get some of this done 30 years ago and then back completely off of it. where they were going to pay for the pumping of the septic tanks.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you're referencing was basically an inspection of the tank at the time of sale. That got through, that got enacted, and there was so much blowback that eventually the city said, well, we'll even pay for it. Pay for that inspection as a pilot. And then that still was even too kind of controversial. People saw it as potentially killing the sale of their house and complicating the sale of their property. So that, that was the route that the city went down years ago. And even that proved to be too onerous back then.
Have you,
It seems
have
as
you
though
ever tossed
unless
around
something
have you ever
happens
tossed around
to
the concept of a
get off the
universal?
septic tank, they're not going to do it. They're not going to be in favor of doing it.
Say that again, Bill?
Unless there's something, some outside force that requires people to give up their septic tank, the vast majority of them are perfectly happy with it. And you're never going to get them to agree to pay $35,000 or $40,000 to have what they have already got, plus a monthly fee to the sewer department.
So,
Okay.
so just to kind of reframe the discussion,
Hey,
you
Douglas,
will,
can I just throw out one idea real quick?
go ahead.
Sorry, I don't, and I'll stop talking. So have you ever heard the concept of, you get this on your phone bill all the time, the Universal Service Fund?
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody pays $1 or $2 a month and it goes into the Universal Service Fund. The whole concept of the Universal Service Fund was to basically ensure that everybody had basic telephone line. So whether you're out in the farm that's 20 miles away or whether you're in the urban area next to a central office, everybody was going to get the equal cost of that pipe, the telecom pipe being put out to your house. I mean, why couldn't we even think about that for some of the hotspots where there's a tiny, and I know Douglas is smiling thinking this is going to go nowhere.
Well, the bill came up with a creative green fee, and it was the same exact idea of you paid. So let's just take, for round numbers, divide it out, it's 30,000. Let's just say we came to some formula where you paid 15,000, but then this green fee, which was contributed by everybody that gets this water bill, ultimately paid the other 15,000. And I don't know the exact kind of dead end point of that, but I do know that the Water and Sewer Commission basically said that their governing statute would not allow them to charge people who already have sewer for somebody else's sewer hookup.
I agree. I think that's right. It would have to be an island-wide assessment. It'd have to come out of, it'd have to be, you can't have, I think what people have an issue with is if I've already got it, why am I paying for somebody else to join the club? That's a hurdle too far to cross, I'm guessing. You got to spread it out over the entire community. And that's what I'm saying. If this is a community, if this is going to benefit the entire community should be able to chip in. I'm saying, if I had to pay $1 a month and everybody else had to pay $1 a month, all of a sudden every month you're generating enough revenue to maybe hook up a site or two.
But I think the pitfall is we can't charge you $1 a month because you already have sewer.
No, I'm saying it would be a city assessment, not a sewer assessment.
At the city level, not at the Water and Sewer Commission.
Right. We're saying this is going to benefit it's going to benefit everybody. So everybody should chip in. But
So what I was going to get to is that when we did the generic MOU with the Water and Sewer Commission, when we had these discussions and Bill proposed the green fee, that we were at a very different time with the Water and Sewer Commission, and we had a heck of a time getting the simplest response from them. And I think that we are in a different stature with them, and I think that we have a much better relationship now than we did then. And we, as a commission, I don't know if you will remember this, when we did the past MOU, we committed to basically revisiting the nuts and bolts of how to get it done. You know, and they are, to Scott, I think kind of to your point, they are looking at just generating of creating a fund that they're going to contribute to, that would be, and they haven't worked out the nuts and bolts of it, but it would be a pot of money that would basically be made available to offset expenses when they choose to expand a public sewer line. And I think that it would be done using our framework of, we're going to make you extend a sewer line if you build a new house within 150 feet. I think that they would use their fund to say, okay, you're going to go for 150. We have analyzed it and we see we can get a lot more bang for the buck if we tack on another 200 feet. And then we have the requirement that a new house within 150 feet has to tie in. We also came up with a requirement that any property that sells adjacent to that line has to tie in when they sell. So I think that those things are kind of leading to some of that leapfrogging that the Planning Commission was hoping it would lead to. And I think that it's probably led to the Water and Sewer Commission looking at it and saying, hey, if we did this strategically and we had a fund that when the opportunity avails itself, we could kind of tie in some additional work and hurry along this kind of evolutionary expansion of the system. So all that to say is, I think that if we were to sit down with them and try to work on the nuts and bolts of how to do it in the near future, I think that we would have a different outcome and potentially able to come up with some of these type strategies. But Scott,
That'd be great. Yeah.
I think your point of identify the hotspots, come up with a kind of a plan that can be replicated as these hotspots come, as they appear, and work them individually and dedicate funding to it, put the appropriate triggers in place. I think that we could come up with a better system to cause it to expand quicker than it currently is. But I think just our most recent efforts are having a good effect.
They are, yeah. It'd be nice to figure out a way to, instead of having to pull people in, to have them want to come in and equalize that price or alleviate some of those barriers financially.
Douglas, where is this fund that the water and sewer is accumulating? Where is that money coming from? Is it just an additional assessment to existing customers? They don't have any other source of funds unless they're getting grants.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, Bill. Yes, I think that you're right. It would either be grants or to their, to their, just out of their fees that they collect.
There is about every community in the state has similar issues, especially the communities along the coast. So it's hard to think that there's going to be any meaningful amount of grant money available to us.
Well,
Linda kept making that point when we talked about it, saying that because of the affluence of this island, it's not likely we're going to be qualified for grants.
I don't think we're going to be inundated with grant money, but they did get, they got $500,000 for the additional wastewater facility to, and that was by virtue of making it more disaster resistant.
Well, they got like $2.5 million, didn't they? For Forest Trail?
Yes, I don't think it was that much, was it? Maybe it's ours that we got $500,000. I think we even talked about it. Is it 200? Well, so anyway, either way, they're getting grants. So I think that while we can't expect that they would be fast and furious, I do think that we will, between the two of us, we occasionally will get a grant. We occasionally will see a motivated property owner that wants to extend the line for one reason or another. We take advantage of when property changes hands that has access to it immediately adjacent to it. I think we to me, we just keep working those levers that we have available to us. Not try to do it. I think we've determined we can't really realistically do it all at once.
I looked at impact fees for Mount Pleasant and they're like $3,500 for a residential impact fee.
Yeah, it's not uncommon.
So it's a big difference between 3,500 and 30,000.
Yeah, but they have a grant for this, hooking up to their sewer system, they give you a grant.
Well, and Lisa, that's not expanding. We're talking about somebody actually extending a sewer line, not just the impact fee.
Right. I understand that. But our impact fees are higher too, though. Our
Yes.
impact fees are higher in addition to putting the line in place.
Well, putting in the line in place should be just that's just a factor of the cost. The work should theoretically cost the same in Mount Pleasant as it does here, but it's the impact fees that.
Okay. I think it's like the MOU, it goes on forever.
I know.
I would propose that we agree to come up with a strategy in working with them on a future MOU. And I think that we just said several months ago that we would give it a few months, let the strategic planning and let this planning progress a bit before we re-engage them. But I think we should do that. And I don't know that the comprehensive plan needs to be, it's not going to be that level of detail, but it is an emotional issue. And it's kind of a lightning rod for controversy. So before we set out to drafting the plan, I felt like we would just want a general tenor of how you feel. You historically have felt like it was a goal, but we recognized that it needed to be a very long-range incremental goal as we could, basically. Is that still, or is that kind of is that the direction of the group? Is that kind of where we still stand? And if so, I think we could draft some verbiage in the plan that says that. And we will reference the considerable work that's already been done in this regard. But before we go out there and say it is a goal to expand it everywhere, I guess I wanted to be sure that you all were comfortable with that.
And I appreciate that, Douglas, because it sounds like we do have some dissension among the planning commission now. So it should be either we all agree with this or it's not gonna move forward at all.
Well,
Don't take my comments as being against it. I just think we find a way to make it practical.
Yeah.
Yeah, me either. I think that the goal's a worthy one, but the reality's the reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with those two statements as well.
I do too.
There's got to be a solution. We just haven't found it yet.
Right.
And I think I think we revisit it with the Water and Sewer Commission, and I think we will continue to make strides to expand it. Stormwater drainage, if we could, that also, that's about a page in our comprehensive plan. Do we want to, and really it's just kind of a history on what's happened. And it's a little bit of a description of prior big scale projects. I think that we need to, I would think that we need to elaborate on it and beef it up a bit. And I would also propose that on that element, you allow me to just take kind of a stab at a draft of beefing that up. But I think I don't think I've ever heard anybody speak negatively against improving the drainage out here. So I think that kind of goes without saying, but it's definitely gotten a clearer focus here in the last few years than it did when this comprehensive plan was originally written.
Yep. Thankfully.
Yeah.
So does Thomas and Hutton have a on-call services contract with the city as well as?
No, just individual projects. Why? What were we gonna suggest?
Oh, I just was curious. I mean, I don't know the background. I was just skimming through the section here, and it starts off with an engineering firm hired by the city in '95. So I was just curious what the history there was, and you know, if there's ever been another perspective on some of these things, or if that's even been considered.
Well, so prior to, not seeing that wording, but that probably is, well, I'm sure it's referencing David Stevens at CSE. He did the major stormwater improvements, phase 1 and phase 2 projects that we talked about.
Who was that? I'm sorry, you're cutting out.
CSE, Civil Site Environmental, and it's David Stevens. He is a resident on the island, and he did the bulk of the Wild Dunes engineering, and he did the 2 major projects prior to the work coming up. Thomas and Hutton is actually fairly new to the city in terms of engineering. They've just started working with us in the last couple of years. They have always, though, been the engineer for the Water and Sewer Commission.
Okay, that helps.
Where is that reference?
Stormwater drainage, page 36. I mean, I'm just looking at the packet you sent over.
Oh. Okay, so in 95, right, scratch all that. 95, it was Ian Seabrook.
Who?
Mickey Seabrook. E.M. Seabrook.
E.M. Seabrook.
So you have various engineering groups that kind of work on it. All right, well, I will, any other points on, you have the parks and recreation section in there. You have public properties. I think the rest of those just need updating. I don't know that you will want to get into things like pools at the rec center. Anything that exciting. If not, I will take a stab at working on some of these and give you all a draft for your next
Please
meeting.
do.
That would be
Thanks, Douglas.
Thank you.
So when is our next meeting planned? So there is none in December?
Well, so we historically held training in December, but that may be challenging, and the training. So I don't know if those, it may be some of our last meeting, unless we do choose to meet in December. I think Rick, Vince, and Bill, their terms will end at the end of the year. And so we'll have 3 new members potentially in January. And actually the training for Scott and Marty is a different training. You all will need to get an orientation training. So really it will just be Lisa and Ron that need the continuing education training. And we've typically done that here at City Hall. It's supposed to be monitored, but so I don't know if they've altered their, I'm sure they've had to because of the pandemic. So we'll have to work on training, but I don't know that there's a need to train in December. So I think that leaves the question to you all. Would you, City Council doesn't meet in December, that doesn't mean that the Planning Commission doesn't need to, or can't, I should say. So I think it's up to you all if you'd like to meet in December. There's not really anything pressing. There will be this kind of transition in the middle of the comprehensive plan, which is.
Want to just push it to January, and if something special comes up, get something on the calendar if you need to. Douglas?
That's it. That works for me if that's good with the rest.
Okay.
Rick, what do you want to do
Oh, what do
as far as meeting in December or January?
I can go either way. I mean, if we want to, if there's a reason to meet, I think, personally, I think we should, but there's no pressing issue like Doug says, but I think it's another month. It's 1/12 of the full year. And it's a good time to get some things done. So I would favor it.
Well, and along that line, I mean, maybe we can commit to just wrapping up the community facilities element, so we're not kind of straddling it between two different commission makeups. So if that's okay, maybe we'll
Good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
wrap that up as we've described here.
Get it done.
Yeah.
And Ron and I can still, I mean, we may be able to do our training online.
Yeah, so I mean, here recently, all that training has consisted of is watching planning webinars that are accredited. So you can certainly do that. Let me figure out how other communities are handling that, and we'll figure that out. Probably should technically be a Zoom call, I'm thinking, but we'll
Well,
work
what would really be good for us? I saw the meeting you had with Thomas and Hutton over the Waterway Boulevard and, what's in the plan and all that going forward. That presentation was excellent. I mean, if we met in December for an hour or 2 hours on a Zoom call and did that presentation again, I think everybody would profit from that. There's a lot of stuff there presented, where you're at with the design of the existing system, where you're going. I think if you could replicate that, it would be good.
Okay, we can do that. The rest of that, I think there's the other points were the bids. So that was going to be, that's actually next on our agenda is update on the drainage planning. So there are, as you all will recall, there's kind of 3 separate items that are progressing on the drainage in the drainage world, from kind of simplest, I guess, to most complex. So that was going to be the elevating Waterway Boulevard is, I think, the project that Rick is talking about. They have, Thomas and Hutton met with the Public Works Committee and basically pitched to them an elevation that they felt like met the goal of being not cost prohibitive and providing benefit. So they are going to continue developing plans and cost estimates to elevate that path to 6 feet in their world, which translates to a 9-1 tide, as I said. But now they really need to go figure out exactly how to do that and how much it would cost to do that. So that's underway, and we can talk about that at our next meeting. The next one is the bids for what I've been calling the small internal projects have come back in. We budgeted 500,000 and they came back at 620,000. So we were faced with the option of either scaling back. Basically, those bids involve 7 fairly small projects that we could have taken one of the 7 out, or we could find funding elsewhere in the budget. And I think that at least the Public Works Committee wanted to continue with all 7 and use the funding that the county holds for us as part of their NPDES program to offset that difference in the budgeted amount and the bid amount. So that will be getting consideration in the coming weeks. If council agrees to that, they've indicated that work would start happening in January. So that's the small projects on the inside of the basin. And then the last project is the big outfall project. And that one continues to kind of give challenges from both a permitting perspective and from a design perspective particularly as it crosses the golf course. Because of those challenges, Thomas and Hutton is now going to separate out each of those projects. They basically are going to submit it as 6 different projects for environmental permitting with the plan of if they have a snag on one part of the project, that it wouldn't delay the entire project, and we would just delay that one portion that gets snagged. So they are submitting those permit requests now. There's still a big question mark in terms of crossing the Wild Dunes property. We need basically a wider, we need an easement in a different location and wider than what we currently have. So we are planning to have discussions with Wild Dunes about how to address that. So all of those are moving along. They're progressing well, I think. And like I said, some work should begin as early as January.
But no idea when the outfalls would start.
No, they've told us not, I don't think in any way possible to start this fiscal year. So that has them starting in the next fiscal year, which begins July 1. And even then, I think it's very questionable as to whether or not, I think we're going to be faced with a question as to whether or not we want to move forward with like 2 of the 3 and delay on one, or do we want to delay all to do them all at the same time? So I think it depends on how we choose to progress those.
Is the issue of the golf course with Wild Dunes or getting the permits?
I think it's both, basically. Wild Dunes has not indicated that they're not willing to participate. But it is going to require them to participate to be successful. Last thing on the agenda for me is to just report that the MOU with the Water and Sewer Commission has been approved. I think full council approved it. I think it just needs, and it may have already happened. I haven't heard definitively one way or the other, but it's awaiting signatures either from both parties, or it could be just waiting for us, but it's done. It's been approved. It's just a matter of signing the documents at this point. So that's good. As we mentioned, we had agreed to work on a future MOU, so that this one only took maybe 4 or 5 years to get. It is easy.
Douglas, could you give a short report on where we stand with the short-term rentals in your software and what's happened with any of that?
Yeah, so the software program was implemented, and I would say it was fairly successful. It resulted, I think, in about 100 additional short-term rental licenses, identifying those and getting those licensed. We are now in a renewal mode, both with the software. I don't know if you all will recall, but the vendor gave us, they kind of told us it was a $50,000 product annually. They gave it to us for $15,000. Basically, I think we ended up breaking even at $15,000. So we made that plea to them that it wasn't worth any more than $15,000 to us. So they've agreed to give it to us for another 15 for one more year at that same price. So we've taken them up on that, and we'll be doing it again for another year. So we should hopefully get it to a point where, those those that were habitually not getting licenses, if they were habitual about it, well, it just won't happen any longer. We will be faced with, I think there does become a point where it's costing us, that basically it's the cost of it outweighs the return we're getting from it. But from my standpoint, it was a very useful tool, and it did make our life easier in terms of administration.
We had also asked that the police department would give us at least an annual report on the occurrences with these short-term rentals. Have they ever done that?
No, they haven't. We could ask. I mean, that was, as you'll recall, your the planning commission's recommendation went to city council. Part of it was as a code that actually changed the statutes, and then other parts of it were just recommendations as to what to do. And that part of it was a recommendation, but I think they would be happy to do that. I don't know. I can tell you that the prior chief was very software centric and very report centric, which I don't feel like the current chief is nearly as kind of into the reporting capabilities of his software is. So I don't know what level of challenges it would present them, but I can certainly ask. We have had 2 or 3 properties that you'll recall that part of the recommendation, part of the ordinance was to lower the bar on penalties. It was 3 convictions, and the planning commission suggesting because convictions were so hard to, it just never happened, that a property would get 3 convictions. So the bar was lowered to 5 founded complaints. We do have 2, if not 3 properties that are, well, they were very close. I guess now that it's middle of November, maybe they will squeak through the year without hitting that bar. But it also, that was not the bar for the entire year, so it may have been challenging to impose that bar midway through the year. But I think that's going to be, we'll see. It may end up resulting in some business licenses being revoked.
What was the impetus behind all that? I mean, I know this was a lot all before my time, but it just seems like a lot of fuss for for a financial consideration. It doesn't seem like it's anywhere near worth all the trouble that you guys have gone through.
Well, I do think that, the quality, really the planning commission's goal and all of it was to not really upset the apple cart too much, but to deal with the few bad apples that were out there, and kind of recognizing this trend of people trying to remotely manage via Airbnb from, out of the country in some cases, and it just being a free-for-all at their property. There were several examples given where clearly the manager was not taking full responsibility in managing the property. So I think that would be the impetus, just to get those few bad apples into compliance and not creating the havoc that they were on their neighbors.
So who was?
There's really 2 aspects to this. One is whether or not they're a nuisance in the neighborhood. The other is financial. And remember that these rentals are paying 14% taxes on their rental. So many of these houses are paying several $1,000s a year in taxes. So if they're avoiding that, then that's lost money to the city and the county.
Oh, I get that aspect of it, and if that's the truth, I mean, if that was really the reason, then that makes sense. I guess I was just saying, without having any more knowledge of it, just seems like it wouldn't be. But I don't have any numbers on that. But the noise or the disturbance factor, that's another thing. I just was curious who was driving this, because in my mind, there's a lot more issues on this island to be talking about. But again, this was all before my time, so.
Yeah, and I think it was the issue of short-term rentals was front and center for the planning commission, for the council for many, many years. It was the primary kind of campaigning point. It is no longer, and I don't know if it's just because people have learned to live with it or if it truly has kind of become a lower tier kind of aggravation than it was. I just don't know. I never have really known, but it certainly is less of an issue for the community than I think it was at one time. Again,
Gotcha. Yeah, I have no strong feelings either way. I just was curious what the context was. So,
And part,
all right.
part of it was just a review over ordinances that we enacted, over 10 years ago. It seemed like a good time to review what we did, whether it was working, anything needed to be improved or deleted or any and all that.
And the city was I would say that we were one of the first in the state to kind of come up with regulations governing it. And then it seemed as though, and it did happen, that everybody else, every other community went through that same struggle that we went through and came up with new and different ways to approach the same problem. And so that was a big part of the exercise, is just seeing, we looked at all of the other communities, how are they doing it? Should we borrow some ideas from neighboring communities? So it was just kind of a good research exercise in determining who's doing what to manage those issues. All right, with nothing more, we will plan then on meeting in December, and we'll try to wrap up the community facilities element, and we'll go over in a little more depth the drainage projects and an update on those.
Great. Okay. No other business. Anybody want to make a motion to bring this stuff up?
Make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hey.
It's done.
Thank you.
Night,
See you in
everybody.
December.